Welcome to another exciting episode of Ancient Anecdotes powered by Listen Cup. This is your host, Ramanathan Iyer.
And this is Neeti Ramanathan.
And this is Lalita Ramanathan.
My name is Kamakshi Kaliswaran.
And this is Karthik Anantaraman.
And this is Lekha Sukirti.
Hi, this is Rajavelu from Kodam.
Lalitama, you're back! How was your big adventure to Pyramid Valley? Have you come back enlightened? Or just hungry?
Both. I have so much to tell you. We took photos. We played like crazy daisies. We ran all over the place.
Okay.
Listen, look here. The purple flowers were all over the place. Some places they smelled like roses. Some places they smelled so funny. And we smelled everything. We even smelled the walls everywhere, just to check if they smelled the same.
You what?
They smelled funny everywhere, Pa. All except the fountains near the washrooms.
Hey, hold it. Are you telling me that you smelled the walls near the...
Listen, no. And we tried to count how many paces the main hall was. We lost count 7 times and gave up because Ramya teacher wanted us to keep moving on. And there were a lot of stuff to see. I've never seen something so totally huge.
Like me?
No, bigger, much bigger than you. The structures were so fascinating, Appa. It was like being inside a movie. Big pyramids, echoey halls. It was an adventure with all my classmates.
Echoey halls, huh? Did you try singing? You could have debuted your bathroom concert series there.
Oh, please. If I had, everyone would have meditated just to escape my singing. But seriously, the architecture was so cool. It felt different though. Like their meditation style and the atmosphere weren't what I'm used to.
What you're used to? How so? Did they make you sit on your head and chant something in reverse?
No, Appa. Arjun, my classmate who organized the trip, was really into it. He kept saying how peaceful it was for him. I smiled and nodded, but honestly, I didn't feel it. I kept thinking about our ashram satsangs and the temples we visited. Those felt warmer, I guess. Is it wrong to feel this way?
No, Papa. You nodded and smiled, isn't it? That's the right thing to do. See, you've gone to temples and ashram satsangs all your life. So you feel right at home there, isn't it?
Yes, Pa.
Exactly. Like that, Arjun probably felt at home there because his family practices that style regularly. It's like me at a dosai stall versus when we go for shopping for your clothes. Dosai, instant connection. Clothes, not so much. And that's okay, Kanna. Every spiritual path has its place in the world and they anyhow lead to the same goal. Now, speaking of paths, have I told you about how the great Pandya, Varaguna, respects the Pallavan Ripatungavarman even though he never met him? And about the great temple at Tiruperindurai? Who wants to hear about the grand Avudayar temple at Tanjai?
Me. I haven't heard it. Tell me.
The gates of Madurai yawned open as Sri Mara and Attan's weary procession trudged into the ancient Pandyan capital. The evening had settled heavily upon the city, cloaking it in a dim orange hue. The towering gopurams of Madurai's famed temples loomed above, their intricate carvings standing venerable and solemn, silently watching over the battered king and his small company of soldiers. The scent of jasmine and incense wafted faintly from the temple courtyards, as if the city itself stretched out its hand to soothe the troubled hearts that entered through its gates. The people of Madurai were sympathetic, But to Srimara, the pain in his leg made it feel as though he was being ridiculed for his defeat. Street vendors and townfolk gasped as they saw their king, Srimara, leaning heavily on Attan for support. His once proud gait was now replaced by a staggering shuffle, his left leg bandaged and stiff, betraying the toll of the grueling escape from the Pallavans. The wound on his leg had deepened during the journey, an angry red staining the linen bandages. Attan himself looked far from his stoic self. His weathered features seemed heavier with fatigue, but his eyes remained sharp, scanning the streets for potential danger as they approached the royal palace. Srimara exhaled loudly but painfully, his breath shallow. Attan tightened his grip on the king's side, practically carrying him.
Hold on, my friend. Your trials are over for now.
We should not have decided to run from Kota Maradur, Attan.
Srimara muttered, his voice hoarse with regret, barely loud enough to be heard.
We should have chosen to meet the Pallavans' javelins head on and not show our backs.
We live to fight another day, my king. That's all that matters for now.
Attan paused, almost losing his footing as they crossed the cobbled landing.
And they will pay for this. Varaguna will ensure that they will pay for this.
After Nripatunga Varman Pallava had unexpectedly spared the Pandya king Srimara's life, Attan immediately grasped the seriousness of the king's injuries. The wounds were deep, their edges raw and livid, and a stark reminder of the ferocity of the battle. Without hesitation, he dispatched scouts to locate the famed Chairman Vaidyar Ananthaperumal, a renowned healer and a martial arts master. Ananthaperumal's secluded Kalari school, hidden in the misty hills of Nelliampati, was not just a haven for martial arts training, but also a sanctuary for ancient Dravidian healing traditions. The chairman was celebrated for his expertise in advanced surgical methods and traditional remedies that blended precision with the wisdom of generations. Attan's message had been urgent, imploring the healer to reach Madurai before the king's condition worsened. He had emphasized the dire nature of Srimara's injuries, seeking assurance that the Pandya ruler should receive the best care possible at the earliest. Now, back in Madurai, Attan's thoughts lingered uneasily on the events of the past days. His decision to summon Chairman was driven by a deep concern for the king's safety. Nothing short of the best would do. Every moment of their retreat, Attan had seen the pain etched on Srimara's face and felt the weight of his weakened body leaning against him. The Chairman was not just a choice but a necessity now, a lifeline Attan could not afford to overlook. For Attan, ensuring Srimara's recovery was so pivotal that the king's strength be restored for the better. The palace courtyard was brimming with attendants and soldiers who scattered in a flurry of panic when Srimara and Attan finally passed the cobblestone landing.
Has the chairman Vaidyar arrived yet?
Barked Attan.
Yes, General.
Responded one of the royal guards as a group of them rushed forward in a clamor, eager to assist the wounded king. Attan waved them off impatiently.
Get Varaguna! The king wants to see his son.
Attan rapped, his voice firm, though his muscles strained under the king's weight. The nearest attendant nodded and hurried inside, disappearing up the grand staircase. Srimara shook his head weakly.
Take me straight to him, Attan.
Attan hesitated but finally gave in.
Then lean on me just a little longer, old friend.
The two of them entered the lavish halls of the palace, which were dim in the fading light of the day. The grand tapestries lining the walls depicted scenes of the Pandyan glory, battles won, treaties forged, and the gods blessing kings. Yet, in that moment, all the glory seemed distant and insignificant as Srimara glanced sadly around, carrying the burden of defeat, and Attan carried the burden of a dear companion who should not have been forced into such humiliation. Golden sun rays filtered through the hallways, casting long shadows behind the wounded king. These shadows stretched toward the distant doors at the end of the passage, their length exaggerated by the evening's hour. Shri Mara's slow, deliberate steps mirrored his heavy thoughts. His shadows, impatient, rushed ahead, eager to meet the young prince waiting beyond. தென்னாட்டுள் பொன்னாடாம் பாண்டிய நாடு இந்நாட்டின் குல விளக்காம் கோன் மாறன் வல்லபராயனின் தலை புதல்வர் ராஷ்டிரகூடரை களம் கண்டு வென்ற மா வீரர் கங்கை நாட்டரசனை அன்பு நெறியால் வென்ற மா வேந்தர் நாடாளும் அரசர் இரண்டாம் வரகுணவர்மன்.
Parak! Parak! Parak!
As though responding to their approach, the great doors swung open suddenly and the prince stormed out, his presence fierce and commanding. Irandam Varaguna Pandyan was every inch the warrior, broad-shouldered, thick fingers betraying years of affection with the sword, his dark, sharp eyes surveying his father with such an intensity that gave away his barely contained emotions. His expressions flickered between anguish and fury as he rushed forward, dropping to a low kneel before his father.
Appa!
Varaguna's voice broke as he reached out for Srimara's hand.
What have they done to you?
His words trembled but betrayed an edge of anger. Srimara smiled weakly, brushing his hand over his son's head.
I have seen worse, my son. I have dealt with worse too.
But Varaguna was not listening now. He stood suddenly, his face turning stone cold with rage. His attention snapped to Attan.
General! Explain. Explain why my father has returned in this state. How is it that the Pallavas dared to chase the pride of Madurai through Nadanadu as though he were a common criminal?
Attan, to his credit, did not flinch. He lowered Srimara carefully onto a cushioned seat before standing tall to face the young prince's piercing gaze.
It wasn't for the lack of trying, my prince. We escaped badly.
Varaguna's brows knit together. His anger seethed beneath his calm voice as he brought his face close to Attan's stoic gaze.
Barely is unacceptable. The Pandyas do not survive barely. General, what happened?
Srimara winced as he shifted, shaking his head.
Geography and strategy bested us, Varaguna. It wasn't Attan's fault. The Pallavas had more than we could answer to. A cavalry force so vast, it swallowed us whole.
Appa, I don't care about geography or their strategy.
Varaguna snapped, pacing restlessly behind his father.
We also had horses, didn't we?
Attan cleared his throat.
We did, my prince. 100 good ones when we began. But by the time we reached Arnachalam,
He sighed heavily, reliving the nightmare in his mind.
their ambush was devastating. Javelin after javelin, pikes aimed straight and true. They took more than half our horses. Only 40 made it through with us, and after that, 1,000 cavalry archers and paladins bore down on us.
1,000?
Varaguna whirled around and his voice rose sharply.
Where did they even get 1,000 cavalry? The Pallavas are known for archery, not mounts of fury.
Wherever it came from, it wasn't lent in kindness. But their banners, their armor, all of it was Pallavan. This was no borrowed army.
Varaguna's expression darkened further, his mind swirling with possibilities.
Fine. If they want to race with cavalry, then we will race with cavalry as well. Twice their number.
Varaguna's prime minister, Vadavurar, entered quickly but quietly as the cavalry strength was mentioned. Varaguna Varman turned sharply to Vadavurar.
Vanakkam Brahmarayare. I have a task for you. Travel to Pumbuhar at once. The Chorans bring in horses from Arabia. Take every gold coin you need from their treasury, and I don't care how much you pay. Return to Madurai with enough horses.
Vadavurar bowed down. As you wish, my prince. Meanwhile, the court's physicians had assembled. At their helm stood an old Chera healer, a man of quiet demeanor. His experience and care etched into his posture as much as his face. Athan bowed deeply to the chairman, for he had never seen him before.
My father has always spoken highly of your skills. Oh, great sir, please, make haste. The king cannot bear the pain anymore.
The chairman moved forward with a silent grace, bending down to sit cross-legged on the floor with a regal poise that commanded respect. His hands, long and refined, extended affectionately as he gently took Srimara's foot. The king felt a protective tingle at the healer's touch, an unfamiliar sensation that caught him off guard. Normally, Srimara paid no mind to being tended to by healers, but this time he hesitated, reluctant to let the full weight of his leg rest on the chairman's seemingly fragile thigh. The chairman, sensing the hesitation, looked up with kind eyes. Srimara noticed with mild puzzlement as a single drop of water collected at the corner of the chairman's eye as he examined the king's livid wound. Despite his age, the chairman's hands were as unwavering as the steadfast pillars of the palace halls. He carefully uncovered the king's leg, exposing the inflamed, angry flesh with blue traces around the edges. Shards of the Pallavan's javelins glinted in the wound, a painful reminder of the battle. The chairman motioned to his assistants, who were sterilizing the tools over small flames.
The shards must be removed before the wound worsens,
He said, his voice calm yet firm.
The herbs will not work otherwise.
As the operation began, Srimara's sharp breaths filled the chamber. The chairman worked with practiced precision, his long, skillful fingers carefully extracting each shard and placing it into a small bronze bowl. For a moment, Srimara noticed the extraordinary beauty of those hands. They were strikingly elegant, contrasting with the arduous task that was being performed. Yet, the pain of the procedure forced Srimara's eyes shut as the chairman continued his work. Once the last shard was removed, the chairman prepared a poultice. He mixed powdered manjishta to staunch the bleeding, haridra to fight the infection, shigru to speed the healing, and other Ayurvedic herbs with warm oil. The scent of the concoction filled the chamber, grounding the tense atmosphere with an earthy calm. The chairman applied the poultice with care, his touch as delicate as his voice had been firm. The wound, Srimara noticed that the blue edges were gone. Finally, the chairman lowered his hands and spoke.
Don't worry, the worst is over.
The pillars seemed to reverberate mildly at the chairman's voice. It seemed to soothe Srimara's heart and the pain in his wound simultaneously. The king opened his eyes, mildly surprised to find his pain ebbing, as if the words of the chairman themselves were a balm. Srimara chanced another glance at the chairman's hands one last time, and he noticed something peculiar. The healer's fingers had developed a bluish hue. A strange thought flickered in Srimara's mind, but the chairman's reassuring presence silenced any further questions or thoughts. Srimara remembered how his mind turned blank as the smiling chairman seemed to glide out of the palace halls with not as much as even the sound of his footsteps. The chairman gone, when the wound was finally dressed, Srimara looked up at his son. His voice was weak but firm.
You must not let your anger blind you, Varaguna. Caution will win this war, not feelings.
But Varaguna's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of his father's seat.
Caution doesn't rebuild empires, Appa. The Pallavas will pay.
His words hung heavy in the air, and Attan shared a silent glance with the Vadavurar. Everyone who were present in the court knew there was no convincing the young prince otherwise. A week later, the royal court was bustling with activity when a scout burst through the doors, his face pale and his breath ragged. The court fell silent as he stumbled forward, collapsing to his knees before Varaguna.
My prince!
The scout gasped, his voice trembling with urgency.
News from Kanchi! Nrupatungavarman has abdicated the throne. His half-brother Kampavarman has crowned the young Aparachitavarman as king.
A fire lit up in Varaguna's eyes. He stood abruptly, his presence commanding the room.
Attan!
He called, his voice echoing through the chamber. What did the messenger say that made Varaguna leap into action? What did Varaguna see that the rest of the courtiers, not even Attan, did not? What is Varaguna's next order for Attan? What will happen next? Hear it first on
Ancient Anecdotes.
on your favorite podcast streaming providers.
Tune in for a brand new episode.